name is Martin Ojok. I joined URA in 1997, May the 7th. I started in domestic taxes. After some times, we went for training. We were trained as total tax persons. Then I was redeployed to customs. Yes, that's when now I started my journey in customs around 1998. You know, when you talk about things like customs and the way it evolved, you need also to look at the history of the country because they are very closely linked. Remember that Uganda had a very turbulent history up to 1986. Now, 1986, we had just come out of war. So following like 10 years after that, the effect of the war was still very serious. And therefore, customs at that time, being a manual system, the country, the economy, everything was down. Now, the main source of revenue for government at that time was customs, because the domestic activities were not going on very well because of the effect of the war. And because of that, if you look also back, you'll find that the economy came from the 1970s when there was the issue of amagendo. Some of you never heard about it. Amagendo is a sort of unscrupulous way of doing things, which is any way by which you do it, whether black market or what. So the country was moving from that state, coming now. Smuggling was the order of the day during that time. So because of that, customs had to be sort of militarized because the military people, after coming and restoring some order, they were the first people who were, particularly the enforcement wing. That's why at that time we had the anti-smuggling unit. And the anti-smuggling unit was from the army. They were purely soldiers who were doing the enforcement work. Now the customs officers were doing mostly the collection work. And collection at the beginning was being done at the borders. But the borders did not have banks. There was border like Malaba was a small place. If you compare the Malaba then and Malaba now, this Malaba now is like a city. The other one was a small village of about a few customs officers with their residences there. Then the collector would collect the money there, put in the safe, then drives with it to Tororo and banks it in the bank. But the revenue needed to be mobilized because government needed money. And that process being manual, there was a lot of pilferage. So to try to streamline it, they decided that, and of course after, there used to be very little business along the borders, but eventually business started picking up. So you find that small village called Malaba would not handle all the consignments coming in. You cannot have all the payments done there. So the inland container depots started developing. The main one was here at Nakawa. We used to call it Nakawa Inland Port, NIP. Where you see now buildings, where you see the big NIP where DPC is located and all this stuff, the top was actually full of iron sheets, which some of them have gone out. The floor, they had just poured hardcore concrete and it was not done. Used to leak, used to rain, but that was where the containers were being kept. The whole yard where the cars are parking right now were full of mud. So, but that was the beginning. So all trucks would come to Nakawa. Then there were some few ICDs that started developing. Now, these trucks to move from Nakawa, from the border, Busia and Malaba, up to Nakawa, You know, some of them, because of lack of tracing, some of them would disappear on the way naturally. So at that time, they decided that the best way of having these trucks move from the border and reach and then pay taxes was to put in place what we call a mobile task force, MTF. The MTF work was supposed to see to it that the vehicles move and reach. So the vehicles would move in a convoy. That means vehicles would be flagged off in the morning. They put them in a single convoy with patrol vehicles along. One may be in the front, one in the middle, another one in the middle, then one behind with soldiers. Now, as they move along, if one truck breaks down, you leave a soldier there to guard it while the others continue until they all come. So now that used to be a daily thing. But eventually, as business continued picking up, systems continued changing. The convoy system now evolved into mostly paper control. We were using now papers to control, whereby somebody makes the bond, executes a bond at the border. Then we use what we call a control copy to control. If that vehicle does not move from the border and reach the ICD or the warehouse on Akawa here, then the bond of the clearing agent is not retired at the border. So we started using that. But still, we would send an officer who goes, the trucks come, flags of the vehicles one by one. A manifest is generated at the border, and then the officer goes there, flags of these vehicles in the morning. After flagging off, carries the papers, comes with them to Nakawa. In Nakawa, we had a small sorting room. This area where now they have built the parking slot, we used to have offices there, which was called the convoy office. We do some sorting. Now we know that yes, this truck was declared to go to maybe multiple ICD, the other one goes to Transami, the other one goes to, then you take those papers. Then there are those trucks which are going in transit, like to Rwanda, Congo, or South Sudan. Then you send these papers to follow them, like up to Katuna. The officer now is dispatched from here with that paper to go to Katuna. Now when he goes there, and if he finds the truck is there, he exits it. He or she exits the truck. If the truck is not there, he comes back with the paper until the truck reaches. And those days, this may sound like, because the transit period was long. Why? Because the roads were very bad. They were not good roads. One, two. Second, even the trucks at that time, remember Uganda had just come out of sort of a war situation. So even trucks which used to ply this route coming like from Kenya were old trucks. You find them, Fiats of 1950s were the ones being driven. The maximum speed it can run at is 30 kilometers per hour. And the drivers only drive at night because during the day the whole cabin would heat up. So you find that sometimes by the time you dispatch a vehicle from here, like to Mpondwe or to Katuna, they go and find when the truck has not yet reached. Then they exit it. So that is how it came. Now, eventually, we now saw, of course, the paper control continued being improved until the computers came in. The teams were composed of, as I said, the enforcement part was mostly people who were seconded from the army who were coming to do it, because anti-smuggling unit worked until some point when they handed over to URA. URA had to train its own people because at that time I think the army was had a lot of issues to do with the war. There was civil war in the west, in the north, so maybe they were overstretched. Then they wanted URA to take over the issue of customs. So, but still, at first we were of course using the soldiers, then later on we were using the police, because the enforcement bit of customs, that's where the main issue was, was very difficult at that time, because some of the smugglers were armed people. So you cannot go when you are not armed. And yet the law did not allow us as customs to carry arms. So we had to rely either on police or on the army, which I think is still going on up to now. The border points at that time, I start from Mutukula, we had Chikagati, we had Katuna, we had Bunagana, Chanika. There was a small place called Kamwezi, but it was sort of on and off station, whereby most of the time an officer just goes there, checks, and then goes away. And then that was in the west, and there was a Shasha River, and then there was Mpondwe. Toroko was not yet, we would not call it a border, it wasn't there. Then there was Goli, Zeu was also on and off, and then the main one was Aru in Vura going to Aru, Vura, and Koboko, and this one called Elego used to be Elego now is the extension where the border was extended there, but it used to be at Bibia. But sometimes, because of the war which was there, they would move it to Gulu. So they would clear the things from Gulu. If you go to Gulu, you'll find a roundabout where they call Customs Corner. That was supposed to be where customs used to be before going the other side. Then there is one border which is called Madope in Kitgum, but it was also at that time it was on and off. Mostly it was manned by, sometimes if there is some service required, then the domestic tax people could possibly offer it, but it was apparently not there. And in the east we had Busia Malaba, and there is this border called Swam. It has been there, but it is also an on and off at that time. I mean, on and off is sometimes you put the officers there, sometimes the officers are not there. And then there is one in Karamoja we call Amudat, which has always been on and off. I don't know right now if it is fully functional. So those were the offices I know. And of course here we had Port Bell and Nakawa here. There was an office, because Nakawa Inland Port was here. So there were officers here. And I think the only ICDs at that time was Transami and Multiple. So those were the ones which were there at that time. Technological transformation that really stood out, that I think really made the biggest change, is the introduction of the system for processing, that is the Asikuda. It may look like a small thing, but it's a very big thing, because it streamlined the way that processing of customs declaration is done. Because now with the Asikuda, and of course coming with Asikuda world now, has even made it better, because we can control almost all aspects of customs except the few. I was in transit monitoring that convoy system for quite some time, and I know the headache that was involved. And now to see that TMU officers can sit in their offices and they just control goods in transit without having to run around with papers the way we used to do. That itself is a very, very big game changer. And of course, additional things like the electronic cargo tracking system. Because you know, we can have with cargo or with customs, there are two things. One is the documentation. The documentation can be very perfect, but the interface between the document and the goods is more important. Because you may be controlling, but you're controlling air. When the truck possibly is empty. We used to have situations where somebody goes to town, offloads the fuel, and drives an empty truck to the border, and crosses and comes back. If you're lucky, they load water on the way, and they take it. So the physical goods, interface between the physical goods and the documents is very important. And the electronic cargo tracking has actually brought about that critical interface. And I think all those are really transformations that it was never imagined at our time when we joined. We had never imagined such a thing would happen. Customs today, I see it with with a lot of hope. Particularly for the younger people who are joining. They have joined customs, which is moving in a very good direction and moving very fast. Because if you look at it now, in the 70s we were almost, we were not even anywhere around we were sort of a country which had a ban. Right now, you see that customs, Uganda Customs as such, is playing a lot of role in the international scene, within the region and outside the region. By the time we are able to send technical experts who compete with other experts around the world to WCO, that is very, 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 shows that yes, we have the substance to be there. And the technological transformation which has taken place, our working environment has become better because the tools are there, the computers are there. Now we sit in a very comfortable office. I can afford to wear a suit and come to office. Those days it wasn't. You could not, because I was at the verification bay in Malaba. When you go to office at 8, by 9 o'clock, you need to change the shirt already because the dust is all over you. So it's like somebody who has been, because the trucks keep turning and creating dust there. But now when you go to Malaba, Malaba is a beautiful place. So I think I look at the customs today as a very good place to work in. Of course, as our journey ends and we hand over to the younger people, we just hope that they will take it to a better place. The environment we are working in is very dynamic. Things keep changing. And we are working not in isolation, we work with the rest of the world. Now, we need to put more efforts in research and development as well, because that is an area where I think we are not. Yes, we have adopted the good practices that we know of, but we can also ourselves think of more of research so that we can contribute more, make our work environment easier and better. Because if we don't do research more and keep on developing ourselves, we find ourselves lagging behind. the old-timers now, I will just only congratulate them for having made it this far. But for the new ones who are coming, customs is a very challenging environment. If you come or if you hear from outside, you'll not understand what's there. Customs has moved from that time when it used to be a gate man's work to now real work that requires you to put in your brain. And it comes with its own demand. It's a very challenging work, but very interesting, because every day you solve a new problem, which they keep on changing, coming, you deal with people. So it is something that is ever challenging you, and as you get solutions to it, you become better, and therefore that means you should come in with that attitude or that mind to do the work, to face the challenge, and you will really enjoy the work. However, customs has its challenges, because, as they say, the hand has the palm and then the other side. Now, the challenges of customs are there, and they can easily rub you the wrong way. One of the biggest and the most problematic problem with customs has been issue of integrity. If you come into it and integrity is lacking, be sure one day customs is going to brush you the wrong way, because customs is about the law, and the law never lies. If it says A, it remains A even before the highest judge. So my message, particularly to the young officers, come with open mind, come willing to create changes, work as hard as possible, knowing that you're working hard for your country, and enjoy your life as you walk along, because it's one of the best profession that you can have. Why? If I move from here now, I go to Brussels, I meet a customs officer, we start talking the same language. And it's not very easy with all other professions, because you cross borders, sometimes there are some changes. But once you go, you talk the same language. It's a very interesting, and it exposes you to the world. You get to learn different things that takes place around the world, how people do business, what are the current trends in technology. I always say that being a customs officer is so interesting. It's almost like being a policeman, where you have to have knowledge about everything. If somebody is importing plastics, you must have knowledge about plastics, and your knowledge should be better than the one of the person importing. If somebody is exporting coffee, you must have knowledge about coffee. So you find that your knowledge is almost on everything. It's a very interesting area that the young people who are coming in should come and try to explore as much as possible. First of all, the first thing is to wish URA a very good and celebration of that birthday. It's not an easy journey where it started from. And of course, as our mother, who has nurtured us all this time, I also want to congratulate and thank URA for having given us this opportunity to travel this journey with it up to now. And I want to wish all the staff a happy celebration. It's worth it. Let us celebrate it and learn from it. Thank you.
Uganda Revenue Authority, developing Uganda together.